What if I told you witch trials aren't just history? They still happen today. Even in the 21st century, people are accused, tried, and killed for witchcraft. But to understand why, we need to start at the very beginning. In the dark recesses of history lies a tale as old as humanity itself, a tale of witches. In this video, we will delve deep into their ancient origins, exploring the myths and rituals that shaped their stories. From powerful healers and enigmatic seers to infamous historical figures, we will uncover the lives of witches who walked the fine line between reverence and fear. We'll also examine the witch hunts that turned suspicion into mass hysteria, unraveling the complex reasons behind the persecution. Finally, we'll trace the enduring legacy of witchcraft, revealing how its echoes still haunt and inspire our modern world. Stay with us until the end, where we'll uncover a few modern movies that have brought these histories to life, capturing the mystique and terror of witches on screen. Ancient roots of witchcraft. Before the fires of persecution, before the trials and the fear, witchcraft was something older, something primal. It was not a crime, but a connection, a bridge to the unseen forces that shaped the world. It was born from humanity's earliest attempts to understand the mysteries of existence, the cycles of the seasons, the fury of storms, the healing touch of herbs, and the shadows that moved just beyond the firelight. The ancient world was alive with spirits and gods, and those who could navigate this unseen realm were both feared and revered. Shamans and priestesses acted as intermediaries between the mortal and the divine, using their rituals to heal the sick, ensure bountiful harvests, and ward off misfortune. Their knowledge was a vital thread in the fabric of their communities. In ancient Greece, Circe was a symbol of this power. She transformed men into beasts with her spells and defied even the gods. Her magic, drawn from herbs and incantations, was both seductive and dangerous, a reflection of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. In Egypt, priestesses of Isis performed rituals to invoke the gods and protect the living. Amulets and charms carried divine power, while magic intertwined with daily life, seen as a natural extension of religious devotion. In the Slavic lands, Baba Yaga, the enigmatic witch of folklore, inhabited a hut on chicken legs, guarding the thresholds between worlds. She was neither good nor evil, testing the courage and intentions of those who sought her aid. Her magic, both terrifying and wise, represented humanity's awe of the unknown. Druids in Celtic traditions and vulvas in Norse mythology also embodied this sacred role. Druids honored the land and its cycles, guiding their people through rituals that harmonized with nature. The vulvas, Norse seeresses, the women believed to possess the ability to see and interpret the unseen, wove fate itself through chants and spells, invoking ancient forces to shape the future. These figures were not villains, but reflections of humanity's reverence for the unseen. Their power came from the earth, the stars, and the mysteries of existence. Yet, as civilizations grew and religions evolved, what was once sacred became feared. The wise became wicked, and their legacies darkened as the world turned against them. If magic and rituals were part of everyday life in the ancient world, Do you think their disappearance has left a void in modern spirituality? The rituals and power of witches. But who were these witches? What secrets did they hold? Many were herbalists and healers, their knowledge passed down through generations. They knew how mugwort eased fevers, how valerian calmed restless minds, and how foxglove, when used carefully, could save a heart or stop it entirely. These healers were often called upon to mend broken bones, ease childbirth, or ward off plagues with poultices and tinctures made from plants and minerals. Their skills, though rooted in nature, often seem miraculous, or, to the fearful, unnatural. Others practiced rituals tied to the cycles of nature, chanting under the moonlight to align with the turning seasons. They used salt, herbs, and charms to protect homes, or cast spells to ward off harm. For them, magic was survival, a way to make sense of a chaotic and unpredictable world. If you lived in a time when herbal remedies could save lives but were feared as witchcraft, would you risk seeking help from a healer? But darker stories emerged in whispers. Witches were said to summon storms by cursing the wind, or craft puppets, human-shaped dolls, to harm enemies from afar. In Salem, accused women were believed to bake witch cakes with rye flour and urine to draw out curses. In Scotland, rituals included burying eggs to protect or curse homes. While in France, Catherine Monvoisin, more on her later, mixed poisons so subtle they mimicked natural illness, delivering death with a whispered incantation. There were also tales of witches forging pacts with demons in shadowy woods, carving runes or offering tokens to bind spirits to their will. Their curses, it was said, could rot crops, sicken livestock, or twist fate itself. Whether these practices were real or imagined, they fed the fear that blurred the line between healer and sorcerer. The whispers of these rituals stoked the paranoia that turned suspicion into accusations, and accusations into death. The first historical witches. In the annals of history, witches were not confined to legend. They lived among us, their stories etched into the darker corners of memory. Alice Keitler, a noblewoman in 14th century Ireland, was one of the first to face trial for witchcraft. Accused of poisoning her husbands, summoning demons, and performing dark rituals, she was said to hold unholy rites in secret, sacrificing animals and invoking demonic familiars. But beneath the accusations lay envy and greed. Her wealth and independence threatened the societal order, and her enemies sought to destroy her. While Alice fled into obscurity, her maid, Petronilla de Meath, was tortured and burned alive. This was the first recorded execution for witchcraft in Ireland. Centuries later, in 17th century France, Catherine Monvoisin, known as La Voisin, moved in the highest circles of Parisian society, her name whispered in fear. She held black masses where infants were sacrificed, and curses were sold to eliminate rivals. Her poisons infiltrated the courts of Louis XIV, tying her to the infamous affair of the poisons. Her web of deceit unraveled when her crimes became too brazen. Arrested and burned at the stake in 1680, La Voisin's death marked the end of her terror, but her name lingered, cloaked in scandal and fear. In Scotland, during the height of the witch hunts, Isabel Gaudy's chilling confessions spoke of flying through the night, consorting with dark forces and cursing enemies with ruin. Her vivid descriptions of demonic pacts fueled paranoia and deepened the hysteria sweeping through Scotland in the 17th century. These historical witches were not confined to cauldrons and broomsticks. They were scapegoats for society's fears, victims of darker impulses, and sometimes architects of their own legends. Their stories hint at a shadowy world where power and danger entwine, and whispers of the past refuse to fade. The idea of witches as scapegoats for society's fears is a recurring theme. Do you think modern societies still create similar scapegoats for their problems? If so, who or what might they be? History whispers its secrets to those who dare to listen. If you're captivated by these tales of witches, their power and their persecution, don't let this story fade into silence. Hit like to show your support, and subscribe to ensure you never miss another journey into the shadows of history. The rise of witch hunts. The rise of the church cast a shadow over the ancient practices of magic. What was once revered as a connection to the divine became twisted into something sinister. Pagan rituals and folk traditions were condemned as heresy, their practitioners branded as agents of the devil. By the 5th century, councils decreed that magic, no matter how harmless, was a dangerous sin, a crack in the world through which the devil could creep. The church's writings painted a stark picture, a cosmic battle between God and Satan, with witches as the devil's most cunning soldiers. The Inquisition, first created to hunt religious dissenters, soon widened its scope. Heresy and witchcraft became indistinguishable, both punishable by death. The church warned that witches lurked in every village, sowing ruin with whispers and curses. No illness, no failed crop, no untimely death could be innocent. There was always a hand behind it, a witch's hand. In 1326, Pope John the 22nd issued a papal order that transformed whispers of magic into crimes of the highest order. Accusations spread like wildfire, but the flames grew higher with the publication of the Malleus Maleficarum in 1487, written by the Inquisitor Heinrich Kramer. It was no mere book. It was a weapon. Kramer described witches as seductive and destructive, servants of Satan who cursed crops, poisoned wells, and flew on the night winds to their sabbaths. The Malleus declared women particularly vulnerable to the devil's corruption. Weak in spirit, it claimed, and prone to lust. This venomous text gave fear a voice and legitimacy, spreading across Europe like a plague. It taught townsfolk how to recognize witches, how to accuse them, and, worst of all, how to destroy them. The church did not merely guide the hunt, it stoked its flames. Inquisitors and priests presided over trials that turned communities into battlegrounds. Torture was sanctified as a means of forcing the devil's servants to confess. To doubt the existence of witches was to doubt the church itself, a heresy that could send even the skeptic to the pyre. The Protestant Reformation and Catholic Counter-Reformation poured fuel on the fire. Each side blamed the other for harboring witches, for calling down Satan's wrath. In regions like Germany, where these tensions burned hottest, the accusations came like a flood. Families turned against one another. Entire villages were consumed by paranoia, the cries of the accused mingling with the prayers of the devout. The sermons grew darker, warning of witches hiding in plain sight. Villagers whispered of curses placed on children, of storms summoned to destroy harvests. Shadows deepened as every misfortune became proof of the devil's hand at work. By the time the sun set on these hunts, the air itself seemed to carry the scent of burning flesh. And the question was no longer who might be a witch, but who might be next. Imagine living in a time when questioning the existence of witches could cost you your life. How would you have navigated such a dangerous world? The madness of persecution. The hunt for witches reached its apex between the 15th and 18th centuries, a dark period in European history when fear and superstition overshadowed reason. Across the continent, tens of thousands of men, women, and even children were accused of witchcraft. Their fates sealed by a toxic combination of religious fervor, social unrest, and political ambition. The witch hunts varied by region, reflecting local customs and beliefs. In Germany, the epicenter of European witch trials, entire towns were devastated. The Bamberg and Würzburg witch trials in the early 1600s were among the deadliest. In the town of Bamberg, over 900 people were executed in a single decade. These trials often targeted the wealthy and influential, with entire families accused to seize their property. In Switzerland, there was another hotspot: relentless persecution. The last known execution for witchcraft in Europe took place in Glarus in 1782, marking the end of an era, but leaving a long shadow. Scotland, too, became infamous for its brutal witch hunts, with over 4,000 accused during the 16th and 17th centuries. Many were strangled before being burned at the stake, their deaths a grim spectacle of purification. I was there. I've seen it. It was horrible waste of good human blood. Torture played a central role in extracting confessions. Devices like the rack, thumb screws, and the strappado, a method where victims were hung by their arms and dropped to dislocate their shoulders, were commonplace. Under such duress, the accused often confessed to impossible crimes, flying on broomsticks, dancing with the devil, and transforming into animals. These confessions, though coerced, were used as evidence to condemn them. The infamous swimming test became a hallmark of these trials. In England and other regions, women were bound and thrown into water. If they floated, it was proof of their guilt, as water supposedly rejected those in league with Satan. If they sank, they were innocent, but often drowned in the process. Religious and political contexts fueled the hysteria. The Protestant Reformation and Catholic Counter-Reformation turned the fear of witchcraft into a tool of propaganda. Each side accused the other of consorting with witches to undermine society. In Protestant Scotland, King James VI became obsessed with the idea of witches plotting against him, writing Demonology, a treatise that justified their persecution. His influence spread to England after he became King James I, leading to infamous trials like the Pendle Witch Trials of 1612. The Salem witch trials in colonial Massachusetts mirrored these events. Between 1692 and 1693, over 200 people were accused and 20 were executed. This small Puritan community was engulfed in paranoia, fueled by religious zeal and personal vendettas. The trials ended when spectral evidence, testimony based on dreams or visions, was finally deemed inadmissible, but not before irreparable harm had been done. Economic instability also played a role. In times of famine or disease, communities sought scapegoats to explain their suffering. Witches were blamed for failed crops, sudden deaths, and even poor weather. In many cases, accusations were motivated by personal grudges or greed, with the accused often being widows, the elderly, or the socially marginalized. While the madness of persecution claimed tens of thousands of lives, it was not universal. In some regions, skepticism grew earlier. In the Dutch Republic, witch trials ended relatively quickly, as courts demanded concrete evidence of harm, a rarity in accusations of witchcraft. This emphasis on rationality spread slowly across Europe, laying the groundwork for the eventual decline of the hunts. The witch hunts were not merely acts of fear, they were tools of power. They reflected a world gripped by religious conflict, political instability, and social anxiety. By the time the flames of persecution began to fade, Europe had forever been scarred by the horrors of its own making. King James VI's obsession with witches led to the publication of Demonology. Do you think leaders today still use fear to justify controversial decisions? Enlightenment and the decline of witch hunts. By the late 17th century, reason began to pierce the darkness. Enlightenment thinkers questioned the morality and validity of witch trials, calling them barbaric relics of ignorance. Science began to explain the mysteries once blamed on witches. Illnesses were caused not by curses, but by germs. Storms were the work of weather patterns, not sorcery. Courts grew skeptical, and the Witchcraft Act of 1736 in Britain marked the end of trials. The last known execution for witchcraft in Europe took place in Switzerland in 1782, and with it, the fires of persecution finally died out. The Legacy of Witchcraft. Today, the word witch carries many meanings. For some, it remains a chilling reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty, a symbol of the dangers of fear and ignorance. For others, it has been reclaimed as a badge of empowerment, a connection to nature, and a revival of ancient traditions. Modern witchcraft has evolved far beyond its persecuted past. Figures like Gerald Gardner and Sybil Leek were instrumental in bringing Wicca, a modern pagan religion celebrating nature and rituals, into the modern era, transforming it into a spiritual practice rooted in harmony with nature, the cycles of the earth, and the power of ritual. Today, millions around the world identify as witches, practicing openly and celebrating their beliefs in communities and festivals. But the shadows of witchcraft are not confined to history books. In some parts of the world, accusations of witchcraft still lead to violence and death. In 2021, reports revealed that hundreds of people in countries like Papua New Guinea and parts of Africa were attacked or killed after being accused of sorcery. Even laws remain. Saudi Arabia continues to prosecute witchcraft as a crime, punishable by death. In Tanzania, thousands of elderly women have been strangled or burned over baseless claims, while in Ghana, many accused are banished to witch camps. In popular culture, witches have taken center stage in films that both terrify and captivate audiences. In Suspiria, 1977, remade in 2018, witches weave a sinister web within a prestigious dance academy, blending elegance with unspeakable horror. The Witch, 2015, dives into 17th century Puritan paranoia, unraveling a family's descent into fear and the supernatural. Meanwhile, The Witches, 1990, remade in 2020, delivers a darkly whimsical tale of a coven plotting to eradicate children, led by the unforgettable and chilling Grand High Witch. These films showcase the enduring fascination with witchcraft, from its darkest fears to its most fantastical imaginings. The history of witchcraft is a mirror, reflecting humanity's darkest impulses and brightest aspirations. It is a story of power, both real and imagined, of persecution, resilience, and myth. And it reminds us of one undeniable truth: magic never truly dies. It lingers, waiting for those brave enough to seek it. The question remains, do you dare to look deeper? Tell us, if you could summon one historical figure to learn their secrets, who would it be? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let the discussion begin. As the echoes of these tales fade into the shadows, remember, history is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. If this journey through the dark has captivated you, cast your spell by hitting like and subscribe to uncover more stories of mystery, power, and fear. Until next time.